Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey towards peace, purpose, and fulfillment? Join multi-certified coaches Denise Russo and Samantha Powell for your signature story retreat. This 3-day retreat is designed to put you on a path of self-discovery and personal growth. Your signature story is all-inclusive so you can focus on what truly matters. Our seasoned and certified facilitators will guide you through eye-opening experiences, providing the tools and insights you need to create lasting change. If you're feeling tired and stuck and want to change your story, this retreat is your opportunity. Invest in yourself because you are the most important asset. This retreat is your chance to prioritize your well-being, enable perspectives, and unlock your full potential. Reserve your spot today and take the first step towards a brighter future. Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf with your hosts, Denise Russo and Samantha Powell.
Hi again, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is a life and leadership podcast focused on how we pursue our passions, lift the lid on our potentials, and really live out a significant life of purpose. We are here today in a continuation of a really great series of a book called Coach Wooden by Pat Williams. This is the 7 principles that shaped his life and will change yours. So thrilled to be here once again with my friend Sam Powell, the founder of Lead the Game, coaching and leadership development organization. I'm Denise Russo, the founder of School of Thoughts. We're together today talking about principle number 6. This is part 2 in the series of this chapter. If you missed the previous chapter, please go ahead and listen to it. But if you can't go back and listen to it, it's okay. You're going to be able to fit right back in where we start today. We're going to pick up with what we called the 3 F's. And so, Sam, how about we kick it off with what these things have meant to you, and looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, I love that this principle we broke into 2, and I love that we've got these 3 together because this is the shelter of faith, the shelter of friends, and the shelter of family. And the shelter of faith section kicks off with a quote from Coach Wooden. And faith, Coach once said, is the greatest shelter of all. In many ways, we've been taken in by materialism. I'm not saying possessions are unimportant, but we often put them out of proportion, ahead of family, faith, and friends. And so for this first F on faith, I think about building a shelter of having faith, either in a religious context or in just something greater than yourself, right? In having faith that things are going to work out, and having things that, and having faith that we'll be ready for a rainy day. We'll be ready for the things in which we need a shelter. So I love these 3 F's, but kicking it off in faith to me is just such a big and important concept of building a shelter of faith that the hard times, right? The rain will stop and the storm will pass and things will get better. And I love this one. And I know, Denise, faith is such an important thing to you. It's a huge part of your life. What does this F mean to you?
I feel like I want to cry because this is, for me, probably the most important thing and foundational in my life. I've had a lot of challenges and obstacles and hurdles, as I know you have as well, Sam, in different parts of my life. But every time where I dug deeply into my faith, I've been able to see God in the midst of those things. And all the time, every time, something good came out of something bad. And so when I read this chapter and the part where Coach was talking about possessions being unimportant, I think we've talked about this in a previous episode, but my home was destroyed in a flood in 2009. 20 feet of water went over our homes in our subdivision. 1,800 homes were destroyed. Thousands of people were displaced. And as we were trying to get rid of things, I, at the time, was living in a 6-bedroom, 3-bath, 2-story home. So imagine the water went up to halfway in the top floor of the house. Yeah. Unbelievable. And our house was up for sale for 6 years before the flood happened. A few days before the flood happened, our realtor called and said, hey, guess what? The house is going to close. And on Wednesday, we're going to go to the closing. You're finally going to be out of that house. So all of our most favorite things were in these pods in the driveway. Well, needless to say, the pods got submerged in the water. And we ended up having to have 6 dumpsters for just our home to throw away everything down to the electrical wires in the house. And so what struck me in this chapter was the part where he talked about how faith is the greatest shelter, not your things. Because when I got rid of all the things, as sad as it was, especially throwing things away like the kids' pictures from kindergarten or their fingerprints from the hospital or things that just washed away that went who knows how many blocks away in the water, the faith part of it is what sustained us through it. It's actually what ended up having Olivia create Save the Earth projects and be able to impact hundreds of thousands of people around the world. But what it also got me to think about is you can have faith in something, but do nothing to prepare. Like we've talked in multiple chapters now about Coach's philosophy on preparation. And so the thing that also struck me in this shelter of faith was about being able to have your focus on things like being faithful with what you are given. And so in the chapter, it talked about how Coach would tell you that it's not a question about saving money. It means doing things in advance in anticipation of rocky days that are inevitable. And I think you and I have even talked about this, that when we both were faced with the situation of being displaced from our jobs recently, there were some friends of ours that weren't prepared. They didn't save up for a rainy day. They were worried that they wouldn't have what they needed to sustain their lifestyle, and perhaps didn't even talk with a financial advisor about how to make sure that they do have that shelter. But for both you and myself, I think that where we looked at it was that there were some rainy days that came. We've had faith through this to be something that is far better than what we were leaving behind, but that we also had the shelter of being financially prepared. So do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I think we covered like the financial preparedness a lot in the last one, but if I'm thinking about that in the context of like faith, it's that there will be another path. Like there will be another path to a job. There will be another path to money, to income, to health insurance. We're in the US, right? That sort of thing. And it makes me think of, there was this point in my career where it was actually the role that brought you and I together. And I had been offered a role, and it was a big step, right? It was a kind of a step up for me in my job, being on like an executive team. And I'm like, how do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? Is it the right thing? I have a young kid at home. Like, is that? It was kind of debating. And I had that really honest conversation with VP at the time. And she said to me, she was like, Sam, there's always an off ramp and an on ramp. It doesn't matter, right? You could go into this, like, if you feel like you could do this, if we think we can do it, that's great. If we find down the road that it's going to be too difficult, right? Or we find down the road that, this isn't what you want, there's always an off ramp. And if you take that off ramp, it doesn't mean you can't get right back on the road later on down the path. And I think that it takes a lot of faith to have that mindset that things are going to work out, right? That, just because this is the current situation that I'm in, having faith that this won't always be the situation that I'm in is something that you got to dig down deep for. But if you have that shelter of that mindset and that thought process, then that's going to guard you against any storm that you face, right? Any terrible thing. You will face the absolute worst things, but if you have that shelter of faith that things will get better, they will be okay eventually. I will smile again. I will find joy. There's got to be a path to that. Having faith that there's got to be a path to joy somewhere and fulfillment somewhere. I think that is I agree with Coach Wooden. It is the most important shelter you can have, because it's always the thing that's going to get you back on that road, back on that highway.
Agreed. I totally agree with you. There's an author that wrote a book thousands of years ago. The book's called Hebrews. And what he says is he defines faith. He says that faith is the assurance of things that are hoped for and the conviction of things that are unseen. So just like what you're saying with your story with that wonderful leader that you experienced, was You can't predict the future, but why think that it would be something bad? And if you do have that off ramp, if it's something that you don't want to do, nothing says you can't do something different.
Right. Exactly. And being able to sit in that faith and having that built for you. I mean, I love that. That's such a great definition of faith. And I think one probably many people are familiar with, but yeah, it's really, really great.
The fact that you had that leader share that with you and have faith in you says a lot about leadership as well. The book says, be good to people and they will be there to help you. Build your knowledge through good books, have the discipline to take care of your health, and above all, develop faith and patience. What does that speak to you, Sam?
Well, it makes me feel like I really do got to get into some better habits. But that's just because that's what's top of mind for me. But I don't know. I guess that's where my head goes, is into this habit of faith, this habit of doing the things that you want, doing the things that are going to build those shelters. But the mindset that you have has got to be one of the shelters that you build yourself, that mindset, that faith in it's all going to work out. And what can you do to build habits about that, right? There's a whole field around positive psychology now, right? That's really become an emerging field in the last, 20 years or so. And that a lot of that is kind of tied into that, right? It's how do we sit in positive emotion? We deal with that a lot in coaching, right? How do you get yourself into a place where you can believe the thing you want is possible and you can set the plans and the habits and the things in place to make that happen? And so when I think about that quote that you just shared, like that's where my mind goes, is when we're building a shelter of faith, part of that is building a shelter of a mindset of belief, building a habit of belief, and, really thinking that I can do this. I can achieve the things I want. I can reach the potential that I want. I can hit my passions and live a life that is fulfilled and full of purpose. And that it's a small section in this book, but the faith is the biggest thing for Coach Wooden. And I think of these shelters, it's by far the biggest one, really. It underlies everything. It's the foundational one, I think.
I think so too. And you had just mentioned the last part of your sentence was about having a foundation of living a life of purpose. And that really resonates with me from this part of the chapter, because Coach Wooden talks about what does success mean. And in the eyes of some people in business, success might mean a title or a big house or a fancy car or being competitive or more sales. But what does success really mean to you? Whether you're the listener or, for myself or Sam, the book says that we're all seeking success. Success, according to John Wooden, is peace of mind. That has nothing to do with his title as a winning coach. His success definition is peace of mind. Man, I love that. It says peace of mind is a direct result of self-satisfaction in knowing that you did your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming, and not just in a physical way.
I love that definition. And I think I've said this a few times, but it just puts me in that concept of enough. That success is, I've gotten to the place of enough for myself, right? However I personally define that to be, that success is something I get to define, and it is uniquely mine. And when I reach it, I have that feeling of fulfillment, that feeling of peace of mind that I've done enough, I've accomplished enough, because this is where I'm at, and sitting in that self-satisfaction, it's and having faith that you're going to get there, right? That's really, like, this is in the context of this chapter. Again, this quote's in here multiple times in the context of, the different principles, but having faith that you can get to that place is something magical, I think. And moving on to the next, the next one of the 3 F's here of shelters is a shelter of friends, right? We don't get there alone either, I think, is the thing that, I think about it. Whenever I'm coaching somebody, whenever I'm talking to somebody about, hey, getting to your dreams, that's one of the things that I talk about, is nobody gets anywhere alone. We do it with each other, with our friends, with our community, with the people around us. And so building a shelter of real connection, of real friendship, and that deep space where we share in our joys and in our losses and in our sadnesses and in everything in between. Having a shelter of friends will sustain you through those storms and sustain you through those rainy days. And Denise, you and I both experienced this personally really deeply, right?
Absolutely. The coach says in the book, or Pat writes in the book, that coach said, building a shelter against a rainy day is something you do every day by the way you maintain your relationships, by the way you treat the people around you, and by the way you talk to God and listen to his word. And when I read that and I was thinking about relationships, I have to say, like, I have some friends who are high, if you know anything about DISC, they're high on the S personality side. Like, they're the ones that are like, they're going to stay faithful to your friendship. These are the people that no matter what, it can be a month, it can be a year, that they're going to be checking in on you and just saying, I'm thinking about you. How are you doing today? You were on my mind, or let's meet up. And I find myself sometimes getting so caught up in the busyness of business that I don't always take the time that some of these faithful friends have done for me, where they've reached out at times where I think, man, you must have just known that now is the time I really needed you the most. And you need to be able to count on people when things need to be counted, right? Like, I already talked a little bit about the flood and how people came to me when I needed them the most. And I think I can really say with confidence, if there was somebody that I needed for something, who are those people that I can count on? And one of my best friends I went to college with once said to me, Denise, you're going to have people come into your life for reasons and seasons. You don't know how long they'll be there, but express gratitude for the time that they are.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, I moved a lot growing up, changed schools a whole bunch. We moved overseas when I was in high school, in between my freshman and sophomore year. And so I've had friends that I've spent a year with, I've spent 10 months with, and they were so impactful on my life but they were just there for that season, right? Well, like, the odds of us crossing paths again physically, like, not great, not high. But guess what? When those dark moment happens, guess who I got a text from? That person that says, I know we haven't talked in a while. My number is the same. Give me a call if you need it. And I know they meant it. I know, like, just from that, intense time that we had together, like, that it's really that. And being that person for other people, I think is so, so important. I mean, when we lost our youngest son, that was the only thing, gratitude was the only thing I could sit in when we came back to work and when we, kind of resumed, quote unquote, normal life after that loss. I mean, it was the friends that showed up for us. It was the community that showed up for us. And I was blown away by that shelter of friends that we had in this, like, the deepest, darkest storm of our whole life. I mean, I'm pretty sure I think that those are like the words that I used when I wrote a thank you email to everybody. And our thank you cards had a picture of our son on it, and it just said grateful across it, because that was what we were left with in this shelter of friendship, was this deep, deep love and deep gratitude. And that came from us, being in relationships with people, right? Really getting down and deep. And if somebody needs something, like, my husband is the ultimate helper. Like, our chapter on, like, help other people, like, Dan's the first one who shows up. He is literally right now at a baseball field rebuilding dugouts, like, because the one guy asked him, like, hey, is anybody here? Like, and I knew before I even talked to him, when I saw the message, I was like, oh, Dan's rearranging his day. He's going to go, do that here. Like, it's amazing. Like, when you're a person that sits in helping. And I think, like, I watch my husband do this all the time. Like, we've moved a few times. My husband is the person who helps everybody move. He has, like, random people move, like, people we work with, whatever, like, he'll help them move. When we needed to move, everybody showed up without even question. We had our house, like, empty and, like, unloaded and then reloaded in no time flat because of the amount of people that showed up to help, because my husband is a helper. And he's not doing it to build a shelter. He's doing it because that is just like, that's the thing that'll be written on his epitaph is like, here lies Dan the helper. Like, and that has created such a shelter. And I sit in awe of that. And I'm grateful for that because he's created that for me because he's lived a life that is this helping space that creates this shelter that surrounds both of us. When we hit our really dark times, when we're trying to do something, good and give back and, do a fundraiser and raise money, it's, like my friends show up. My friends are wonderful. Dan's people, right? If we're categorizing who's his people and my people, they show up in waves because of the life that he leads and the life that he lives is just unconsciously building this shelter of amazing community and amazing friends. And like, it's just such a testament. Like, it is such a powerful thing to watch happen and to get to be a part of. It's really amazing.
Oh, I can't wait to meet him and to meet your son because your family is just amazing. And the things that I know you recently did for other families in honor of your son is just it's an incredible testament of these 3 F's, faith, family, and friends. And, Coach talked about in this book that, well, not Coach, there was a guy named Seth Greenberg talking about the coach. And he said that Coach is the type of person that takes the time to listen and hear, which is a lost art. And that Coach talks with people and to people, not at them. And when I think about what you just said about Dan, when I think about some of the leaders you and I have experienced, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between, when I think about people in my own space, whether it's my family that I didn't get to choose, my friends who I did get to choose, which I call my family, that all of them are really the ones that stand out are on one side of the spectrum, that they either listen and hear or don't. They talk with and to people or not and talk at them. It's a great leadership lesson because when I do think about some of the most challenging leaders I've ever worked with in my career, they've been managers, not leaders. And there's a vast difference. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's a huge difference between a leader and a manager. And the leaders that I've really respected have been the people who've sat in silence and listened to what I needed or what my team needed or, what was happening and really sat in that. This is something that, I mean, I'm a talker. I like talk. I'm the one who's going to tell you a million stories in the social environment, that sort of a thing. And it's funny and ironic because my name Samantha means listener. And I had one of my roommates in college. I was the president of our sorority and people would come in to ask me questions or talk to me about things like all the time. I lived in our suite on, for the sorority and stuff. So people were in and out of our room all the time. And my roommate learned pretty quickly that like, if I wasn't looking at you, I might not be listening. Like if you're trying to talk to me while I'm multitasking, it's not happening. And like, I'm trying to teach my son the same thing, like, especially because it's summer break and he's home. And I'm like, listen, if mom is looking at her computer, there's a good chance she didn't hear you tell me the thing you're supposed to tell me. Right. And so like my roommate always laughed that like my name means listener because she said, you're not a very good listener. And I was like, no, I'm not a very good multitasker and I am a talker. I was like, but when I sit down, when you have my attention, it's going to be that full body listening. And, what I've found over time, and it's one of the areas I really work to develop and continue to really work and develop is that exactly this concept, right? To sit down and to talk with people, right? Because I'm a helper. I want to help people. I want to like give you my advice and do whatever. But I recently heard this thing that said giving advice is its own form of judgment. It's a way of you judging someone else's situation and telling them what you think is best. And so if you really want to listen to somebody, if you really want to get to this level that Coach did, you've got to sit and listen to everything they're saying, not sit in, let me respond to you. That is a deep, deep level of listening. Like I'm capable of getting to it, but like I've had to work for that. And it's not, even though I was born a listener, apparently, or dubbed a listener as my parents gave me my name. And it's a struggle sometimes to get to that and to find those people who are naturally good at that is an amazing, amazing thing. They're they're just the best people.
The best. I have a friend that comes to mind that I actually tease him all the time. A mutual friend we have, Jeff. So Jeff and I have frequent one-on-ones, and he and I built a leadership development program together. Jeff's an incredibly talented listener. He's
He really is.
good at it. And yet it's funny because you're doing most of the talking. He's doing listening, meaning he's being quiet, but you go away from the conversation feeling just so good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I teased him recently by just saying, listen, I need you to now listen to me say that it's time for you to speak, because I do all the talking and I want to hear how you're doing. Mm-hmm. And he's brilliant at it. And sometimes it just takes that kind of presence with someone when they want to be heard. I know that my mom will often say that I feel like I'm not being heard. And that's like her love language, is that she's great at hearing other people. Now, my son, he talks constantly. So again, I probably should say as a disclaimer, he shouldn't listen to this episode maybe. But Vincent will go to my mom because they both are super hyper, lots of energy. They both talk all at the same time over each other. When Vincent was little, he would go up to my mom, and he still does now today, but he's much bigger than my mom now. And he would grab her face and put it in front of his with his hands and say, "You need to look at me and listen to me." And that's how they would actually physically be present with each other. And it was like really very endearing, I guess you could say, but he physically had to do that with her so that they could both focus on each other. And when I think about the last part of this chapter, it talks about family. And when I think about the people that I care the most about, when you think about faith, friends, and family, the ones that I want to listen to the most, the ones I want to be the most present for, the ones I want to give my most attention to, sometimes get the butt end of the deal, right? Because your job often takes you from that. And yet the most important people in your life should be the ones that you have for life.
Yeah, that's very true. And the people that fall into category, right? Or into the family category, they can be the family you were born into. They can be your chosen family, right? Everybody's life looks different. But to me, that family it's those people, it's your ride or die people, right? And like they might actually be a friend, but like when they get to that category, they're really family at the end of the day. And I have some friends like that. I've got people in my life like that. But when I think about what you're saying, that's so very important. It's those people that are your family, right? Whether they're your blood or not family, we do so often miss the appreciation of the depth of what they bring to our life and the shelter that they create around us, because you get so used to them being around. I think, this is really common in like, you talk to like a marriage counselor, like really common there. Like, I don't feel appreciated. And it's like, I have to step back sometimes and be like, hey, you know what? My husband took the dog to the vet today, right? And like, he's taken the dog to the vet every time for the last many times. And I was like, I just need to be grateful for that in this moment. I need to pull back and really appreciate what what this shelter of family brings to my life, and, how important it is, because those are your closest relationships. I know family's so important to you. You talk about your kids reverently and often. And, I know that that's such an important thing for you. When you think about building a shelter of family, like where does that go versus a shelter of friends?
That's a tough one, because I mentioned that I have this word I call family. Mm-hmm. I have many friends. Well, let me not say many. I have selective friends that I consider even stronger than family to me, because they are the ones that I know will be there no matter what, that they don't need to just tell me what they think or tell me what to do, but really want to hear my heart. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. Now, I'm lucky because some of my family actually are my friends. Mm-hmm. And so I love that too. I have some cousins that I deeply, deeply love. And I have some aunts and uncles that I just adore. And if I could choose certain people in life, if I had to go to an island and only bring a couple of people, there are for sure some family and there are for sure some friends. And I think in all of it, it's about how you would look at and define love. And in the book, Coach often said that love is the most important word in the English language, followed by balance. Achieving love and balance isn't hard if that's where you put your priorities. And so, to kind of answer your question about where do I put the two together, whether it's faith, whether it's friends, whether it's family, it first starts with where do you put your priorities. I can say with confidence, when I don't put my faith first, my day is all messed up. I told you off the microphone earlier that my day today is completely a disaster before we got on the phone. And it was because I think I didn't start my day right. Now, through the process of us preparing for the episode that we have, we got to dig in deep to friendship. And I'm so grateful for you. And I just love this time that we have now, because we used to have time together in business, talking about business things, but being able to talk with you about life things is just so much more rewarding. Like, I can picture in my mind what your family is like and the things that you do for fun and the way that you add so much value in the world. And then when I think about family, I just think about how it takes time to build a relationship and that your friends become family over time. And you were even talking about how you have to really work on relationships sometimes, but there is a famous love story in this book that I know resonates so deeply with you. And you're the romance novel queen. So tell us a little bit about what this all means to you with faith, family, and friends and love.
I know. This chapter ends with stories of John and his wife Nell, and it's actually the story of like how they met and how they started dating. And Nell drove out with her brother Jack like to the wooden farm, family farm, and John like didn't look at her, didn't talk to her, like, just like kind of completely ignored it. He's like working the fields and she's out there like trying to get his attention. He just like completely ignores her. So they go to school in the fall and she corners John in the hall and she says, "Why were you so rude to me when we went out to see you at the farm?" And John stammered nervously, "I was dirty and sweaty and I thought you'd probably make fun of me." And Nell smiled sweetly and said, "Johnny, I would never make fun of you ever." And Coach later recalled, "Something happened in me right then. That spark has never gone away." And then it goes to talk about that she was at all of his games. When he played in school, she joined the pep band just so she could watch. But during his coaching career, during the pregame huddle, John would position himself so he could see Nell in the stands. As they made eye contact, she would smile and give him an okay sign with her thumb and forefinger, and he would wink back at her. That ritual, he recalled, carried right through to the last game I ever coached. Like that love story between the two of them, right? He's this super famous, like he is just revered as like the best coach ever, essentially. Yes. And there's this shelter of family and this love story with Nell. I just love it woven throughout this book. And I live for these little moments, but I teared up thinking about this sweet ritual that they have where she's giving him like this innocent little okay symbol and he's winking at her every game, the winningest coach of like all time. And he starts it out, right? Like you're saying, you start your day out, right? Like he starts these games out where he's looking at his person, his partner, the love of his life, and, giving her that wink, like, oh my God, like, I want to cry thinking about it. It's so beautiful. It's so lovely. And like when I think about a shelter of family, like it's why I love romance novels, right? I love the love between people. I love that shelter that two people or, a family of people build that is that level of like, I don't know, just ritualistic love that carries us through our days. Like there's just something so magical about that. Like that is the magic of life right there. And having that shelter and that safety and that space to live in, to carry you through your life is just a beautiful and amazing thing to me. And John and Nell had it. And like I said, I could cry reading their love story that's moving through here because it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. I love that Pat has done such a brilliant job in this book of telling that story. This is a leadership book, right? About a basketball coach, 7 principles that shaped his life and will change yours. And yet, page after page, we get these glimpses into what mattered most to John, and one person that mattered the most to John, besides his relationship with God, was with his wife now. And it really is a very endearing, sweet story to read. And yet we also know in the story that there was a period of time when she passed away, and how challenging that must have been for him. And yet he still added value to people. He still showed up at the breakfast cafe and met with people and poured his heart into them and listened to them and helped other people until the day that he took his last breath. And so it really makes me think about some of the things that God promises to us in the terms of the faith side, is that there's multiple verses in the book of Psalms, and Psalms means songs. And so it's like song lyrics. And if you think about nowadays, there's all these famous singers that are singing songs. You've got one in particular that's selling super overpriced tickets for her shows, and all of her songs are about, maybe like dislike and not loving her exes. And yet then you have other people who are maybe singing about lost love. But the Psalms, which is, written thousands and thousands of years ago, are lyrics about God's love for us. And then there's some verses that talk about envisioning that his wings are shelters to us. And just that visual of thinking about what that could mean, that under his wings you can seek refuge, and his faithfulness is a shield. And so when I think about the last part of this chapter, faith, friends, and family, I hearken back to think, who is the most important in my life in all of that? And for me, it's my relationship with God. And I know that not all of our listeners may have a faith in that way, but if you can have faith in something and in someone, and have friends that you can trust and entrust, and family that you can love, even if they're not your blood, that's what this is all about, building a shelter against a rainy day by the life you live. You said it well in the beginning of the episode, Sam, that this is building against a rainy day, meaning there will be a rainy day. It's not building a shelter and hoping the sun will shine every day. Rain will come. So how do you build that best shelter? And I think we're learning so much. We're only in principle number 6. There's one more to go. So far, we've gone over being true to yourself, helping others, making each day your masterpiece, drinking deeply from good books, especially the Bible, making friendship a fine art. And today we end on building a shelter against a rainy day by the life you live. There's one more chapter to go, so we hope you'll come back and join us again next time. You can access our podcasts on any channels where you listen to podcasts, and if you happen to have a place where you listen and we're not there, let us know. We'd love to connect and communicate with you through our LinkedIn page, which is called School of Thoughts Publishing. In fact, there you can get an automated newsletter that will give you an update when the episodes are ready. And we even give extra takes and sneak peeks on things maybe we didn't talk about during the recording. But we like to end each recording talking about accountability. So this one is a tough one, I think. So Sam, what about for you? What are you thinking you would like to do before next time about building this shelter against a rainy day by the life you live?
I think the thing that comes I feel like I have these shelters in my life. Like I'm so grateful for my family and my friends and the faith that I have that, things are they're gonna work out, right? And that. So I think that I naturally do a lot to invest in that and have those shelters really set up. So I think the thing that I want to do is to go be that shelter of faith, be that shelter of family, of friends for other people. So I think what I'm going to look for is where do they need the wings, to cover them in the rainstorm that they might be, and what can I do to become that and really live that for somebody else, and go find some moments and figure out where to live these out and to be that. What about you?
That. Well, I have to say, today I think we need to dedicate the episode to Dan because the stories that you gave about him super resonated with me. I love that he helped the dog this morning and that he's at the ball field that fixing the dugouts. And so what I think for me is I agree with you. I have strong shelters. I have a family I adore and I love. I have friends that I so value and appreciate. My faith can always be stronger, but it's something that I'm grounded in and I try to get even more knowledgeable about every day. And so when I was thinking about what I might do, it got me thinking about, for example, I have this screened in back porch. I live in Florida. So down here, people have back porches with screens or rooms where you can sit outside and enjoy the weather when it's not too hot. And recently, there were these sand cranes, which are these gigantic dinosaur looking birds. They come in my yard. I love them. I love when they visit. But what I don't love is that they love my house. And so they peck at the screens. And so these screens are getting little tears in them. And so not long ago, it rained really hard here, and water came in to the room where the screens are. And it was because I didn't do what I needed to do at the time in which I noticed the little peckings in the screens. So I have a shelter, but the shelter had holes in it. And so I think for me, what I'm going to think about for accountability is to look at how can I strengthen my shelters of faith, family, and friends this week, maybe by showing gratitude more, maybe by just making sure that I do little things like ensuring that I start my day in the way that I know is going to be my very best day. So between now and next week, I think I just want to fix my screens of my shelters in my heart.
I love that. That's such a great metaphor. And I will probably be stealing a little bit of that myself.
Awesome. Well, Sam, it's been a pleasure being here with you once again. So friends, on behalf of my friend Sam, my name's Denise Russo, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.